As always, donate to Jumpstart. Jumpstart helps economically disadvantaged kids play team sports, which is something that's near and dear to Rachel and I's hearts. So if you go to the links in this description below, pretty much all the information that you will need to donate is there. So we really encourage you, if you can, to do so. Again, it's a great cause. We love Jumpstart. They are our charity of choice. If you can, please donate. That's nice.
It's another drinking podcast.
A nice sugar-free beverage. Love that. We're back in the Overactive Media studio. This is fun. And it is our post-deadline show. This was, dare I say, Rachel, before we even start, I am so annoyed to start off this podcast.
Mike is we have been recording for
like
12 seconds.
Yeah. Because last night I'm going on a run and, I get to a point where there's a huge staircase. So I take a second to stretch before I go down this staircase. And when I do that, I just check to make sure, my phone's not busted, and potentially skip forward in a podcast I'm listening to or something. And I see,
is that not the worst when that? Oh my god, that's the worst when that happens.
Well, I also find when I'm on because I run 17. I ran 19.2 yesterday, but I run 17 5 nights a week, and I find when I'm on the back half, my brain is too scrambled to listen to people talk that I have to listen to babbling brook sounds, running water sounds, spa sounds kind of, because it relaxes me and I can kind of zone out. But the playlist that I have, there's sometimes a mix between really nice spa sounds and then crashing water waves.
Oh no!
So there are times where I have to stop and get forward. It's great. Anyway, that's a huge aside. But I look at my phone and I see, I've been mentioned by my own podcast's account. Okay, I wonder what's going on here.
Damn interns.
Those dang interns. And it turns out that the Arizona, the team formerly known as the Arizona Coyotes, they are suing.
ASU.
They're suing ASU to get their security deposit back.
So I'd like to address
$3.5
a couple of things right off the top. Mike ran 19 kilometers on yesterday night, and I probably don't walk 19 kilometers in a week. I don't understand how you run the way you. I don't understand people who run. It's just honestly I can't. I can't comprehend it.
It's all about tricking your brain.
I'm out already.
It is all about, because I've basically Stockholm syndromed myself when it comes to running, that if I don't, I'm not running tonight because we're gonna get out of here pretty late and I don't want to start my run at 11. I haven't eaten dinner yet or whatever. But I've had to mentally prepare myself that this is a day off. But let's say tomorrow. Let's say we're recording tomorrow, which is Saturday.
Yeah. Because
today is Friday. Because that's when the podcast comes out. And we would never record before. No.
That's never happened.
Exactly. If something unforeseen happened where I couldn't record, you were just for some reason we had to do a podcast that night, I would be very upset, because because not only would it be that it's not that I enjoy I look forward to it, it's that I would feel like a lazy piece of shit.
He enjoys torturing himself.
I do.
What he's
it's fun.
Saying.
It's because I deserve pain, and that's what it's all about. But I get this. So the Arizona Coyotes, or the team formerly known as the Arizona Coyotes, they are suing. Well, I guess not the Arizona Coyotes. The Meruelo Group are suing ASU to get their $3.5 million security deposit back. Now, here's the thing.
No.
So are they suing? So they're suing ASU. They're not suing Gila River or whatever.
No, they're suing ASU, Mullet Arena. They're suing ASU because they're saying that so basically they have a deal because the Meruelos. Tell me if you've heard this before. Are untrustworthy. And so when they went to sign on to use Mullet Arena, ASU was like,
we need all of this money up front.
You're giving us all this money up front, and it's an airtight contract because we know you like to shirk people of their money. So this is not happening. So ASU, Arizona State University, and I don't know if you know how U.S. universities work, but they're for-profit institutions. and they can afford very lovely lawyers, very good lawyers. And I reached out to like a couple of people, and I was like, all right, what is the situation here? And both of them said, this thing's airtight. Like, they're not getting their money back. And the thing is they wouldn't have had to pay up front if they weren't completely unreliable tenants to begin with. And usually, and Mike has experience with this in his day job, when you're an unreliable tenant and you're a nightmare to deal with, they just kick you out.
Well, so having commercial real estate experience now, it's very interesting to look at this because this is right down my alley now.
I'm so excited for this.
And it's funny because, so you're right, like they would have to get a ton of, thank you for fixing my mic. I'm glad we caught that on camera. I'm a child, and like, no, just move it over there.
He really has his microphone directly in front of his face.
Yeah. Sorry, okay. But no, so what happens with this is like, I initially thought they're suing Gila River, which I'm like, that security deposit's gone. Because
what are you doing?
Because the reason, and we don't know if they've, like, I'm assuming they paid their rent on time. We haven't heard anything from that.
Really bold assumption,
but it's a bold assumption. What I assume, okay, I want to make it very clear this is all alleged. All right? Like, I want to make sure that, like, you know, this is just my professional opinion, and it is professional, but I'm going to assume based on their track record,
which we know to be poor, based on numerous reports.
I'm going to assume that they missed payments. I regardless of whether it was
at Gila River or at Mullet.
At ASU. Like, I think that there was something. Now what they're claiming here is that when they were forced to sell the Coyotes, basically.
Because why were they forced to sell the Coyotes?
So
Mike?
this all hinges on the force majeure clause in their contract, which is basically like an act of God. But this is not an act of God.
This is your own act.
This is your own act. So I don't think that should apply. But I'm assuming, and again, this is an assumption, but based on their track record and based on the fact that they're like basically scrounging to get $3.5 million back when this guy just made, what was it, a $1.2 billion on the Coyotes?
Yeah.
So this is chump change to him. So I don't understand why he's suing to get this back. I believe that they missed payments. Again, don't have inside information on this. I'm just assuming.
This is what we like to call an educated guess.
And what happens with that is when, like, a commercial landlord, like when a commercial property management company, when you're just deciding to not pay rent or when you're not paying rent to, you know, basically to help their cash flow, they will apply the security deposit to your arrears, to the balance that you owe. So they have cash flow coming in, and then it is up to the tenant then to replenish that security deposit.
So they were saying that part of the reason, so this was a 3-year lease,
Mm-hmm.
and obviously they didn't stay for the 3rd year. And so they're trying to say, oh, like, we should get our money back. But the problem is I believe they had to pay up front because they were so untrustworthy that ASU was like, no, you got to pay us up front, and if you don't, then you can't. And so it is likely, in a situation like that legally, it's likely that in the contract it says something to the effect of, regardless of whether you use the arena or not, you have to pay us 3 years worth. So what could be happening here is they had to pay up front, let's say, and they had to pay for the 3 years. Obviously, this whole thing happens. Now they're not using Mullet Arena for the 3rd year, but they had to pay up front because they were such terrible tenants at Gila River. And ASU's like, no, the contract says you have to pay for the 3 years regardless of whether you use it or not. Now, and if that is in the contract, they're not getting out of that.
Well, I don't think they're getting it. I don't think they're getting this regardless because what they're trying to claim, I did a little bit of research on it, what they're trying to claim is force majeure. That is an act of God. That is, you know, like...
Did a hurricane come
like a hurricane.
Tear down the building?
A meteor falls from the sky directly at center ice and you can't play. You know, every pipe in the building explodes through no fault.
The meteor is Alex Meruelo not paying.
Exactly. And so...
You launched your own meteor. Shut up.
You're not getting this back. And
it's also not an act of God. Like...
Well, it's not. Like...
We have people losing their houses because of climate change affecting weather patterns and like insurance companies who are very awful, and this is not an insurance company friendly podcast.
Perhaps we could free a certain video game character.
Like, I'm not gonna go that far.
Okay.
But like, I think, put it this way, an act of God.
I'm saying free Mario, the video game character.
Oh yes, we need to free Mario.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's in Bowser's Castle. We
Exactly.
can't have that. What I'm saying is like, if people are losing their houses in like LA and they're like, actually your insurance policy is canceled. Meanwhile, and that's an actual act of God. It's a fire. And meanwhile, this guy's like, act of God, I had to sell my team.
So
get out, go away. Get out of my face.
Here's the thing. That is not the fact that the Coyotes were so poorly managed, and the fact that the Coyotes lost their bid to build, like their zoning bid to essentially build a new arena, on a heaping pile of garbage, and then in a different place, is not the fault of OVG Group, I believe they're called, which is the company that oversees Mullet Arena. It's not their fault. They have no liability on that, so it doesn't matter. You can say act of God all you want, whatever, but when you are an unreliable tenant, when you have a bad history,
and it's public,
and it's very public, I freaking called the city manager. Of Glendale.
Do you know how bad you have to be for Mike Stevens in Toronto to call the city manager?
In Glendale. and he was like, oh yeah, they haven't paid their rent, and they also haven't paid their property taxes, and it's pretty annoying. But like when you don't do that, it is like you then incur, like you're then a high-risk tenant, which means that you have to pay a lot of money that is unrefundable, basically. Like it's a security deposit, and some people think a security deposit only applies to, a deposit if like the lights fall down or if a hole gets in the wall or something.
If you throw a party, if you throw Project X and like destroy the place.
A security deposit is like this is for the security of the landlord, which is also financial security. As in, we don't trust you guys to pay us like on time per our contract. So you need to give us a bunch of money up front, so at least we have something on hand, so that if you jilp us, which like the odds in our financial advisors have said is very true, it's very likely to happen. At least we have something. At least we're not standing there with our dicks in our hands, basically. And so that is your fault for getting in that position.
That would be like rocking up to a bank and being like, I would like a mortgage, and you've defaulted on your last 2 mortgages, and you haven't paid a credit card payment in 3 years. No one is giving you a mortgage.
Well, it's even like, as much as we hate insurance, like it's just like if you're a serial car accident causer, like your insurance premium's gonna go up.
You're on facilities.
Like it's what's gonna happen. So as well, like if you miss payments, like I said, like you're going to, and this is not just also base rent. Like they potentially had to pay common area maintenance. They potentially had to pay, like, it depends on what their lease is structured. I'm assuming it was a net lease and not a gross lease, but it could be a gross lease considering they were trying to help them out. A net lease is that, you pay into a pool of money to help keep the building up front, and then at the end of the year, based on what happens, you potentially get a credit back. If it's a gross lease, it's just like any normal residential lease where you just pay X amount of dollars a month and you're good to go.
Bet you didn't think that you'd be using your 9 to 5 on this podcast.
Did not think that. But if they were missing payments, there's a good chance that like they could. I doubt that they defaulted, but if they did, they could have defaulted. But 2 is that there's a potential that OVG Group applied their security deposit to their unpaid. Also, to their balance.
And so I was just thinking about this. You made the point that they sold the Coyotes for like $1.2 billion. Just some quick math. That would mean they are suing OVG Group for 0.27% of the money they got out of the Arizona Coyotes. If you are suing someone for 0.27% of anything, we need to have a discussion. That would be like, let's say you're worth $100,000, right? Mike, I am suing you for $2.70.
Cool. All right, let's do it.
What are we doing? No, you know what? And actually, now that I think about it, it might be $20.70. But even then, like,
well, I'm ruined at that point.
Yeah.
No, but it's
literally the equivalent of a junior chicken.
He sold them for $1 billion. Now,
okay, so it's 3%. They're suing for 0.35%. That is outrageous.
So, Alex Meruelo sold the Coyotes for $1 billion. Now, the billion there was a stipulation that if in a couple years this were to in a couple years,
yeah,
if they were to reinstate the Coyotes, he'd pay that $1 billion back. However, he has since agreed to walk away from that, which means he pockets that $1 billion.
Right. And also, like, even if he wasn't going to walk away, like, do you think this behavior is going to get you in Gary Bettman's good books?
So I'm sorry that we had to spend so much time talking about this, but, like, these guys just don't go away. And it's like Rachel said, like, you're basically suing. You're Alex Meruelo. You just got – this is the golden parachute of golden parachutes. Like, this is selling the Arizona Coyotes, a team that has never even come close to making a profit in their entire history of existing, that were playing out of a college 5,000-seat arena and were the laughingstock of not just the NHL but professional sports. Selling that for $1 billion is the golden parachute to end
anything.
All golden parachutes.
And you should just be quiet and go away.
And now you are basically suing for the equivalent of what costs a normal person like a junior chicken. Like, it is crazy to think about.
And, like, at max, like, parking in public. It's embarrassing. This is embarrassing behavior, and good riddance, because the Utah Mammoth is probably what they're going to be. I wish they were the Yeti.
That. I wish
Mammoth. It was the Yeti.
Yeah,
and I
too.
don't think that the NHL should allow Yeti, the company, to advertise for the on Utah games, because I saw that. I'm like, that's a troll job. Get out of here.
You know what the NHL should do is they should sue Stanley Cups.
Right? So I actually looked into that because I was making a TikTok about it. The reason that it was allowed to go forward is because it's actually called the Stanley Mug. And I'm like, that's all well and great. It's a cup. It's not a mug. It's a cup.
A mug doesn't have, like, what's the difference between a mug and a cup?
Nothing.
Like, let's debate the ideological differences between a mug and a cup. I would say,
so a cup holds cold liquid and a mug holds warm?
What about a coffee cup?
Coffee mug?
But if a cup can hold, like, only holds cold liquid, what, like, does the universe just implode in on itself when I go to Tim Hortons?
So you make a good point. And that was actually the point I made, was if you're going to allow Stanley Cup and Stanley Mug to go, even though they could be very easily mistaken, because when you type in Stanley Cup on Google...
does a mug have a handle and a cup doesn't? Is that the only difference?
Well, no, because coffee cups have...
But I mean, like, when, like, a Tim Hortons coffee cup doesn't have a handle. I don't think we ever assume...
I don't know.
Like, we also don't, like, for, like, a beer like Stein, we don't call it a beer cup.
This is a hot dog sandwich.
Yeah, but but to be fair, Rachel, some lawyers who are making $500 an hour,
way more than that,
have had this exact same conversation, but it actually matters.
Exactly. Like, yeah, so if we're going to allow Stanley Cup and Stanley Mug to coexist, then if anyone is mistaking a Yeti cup with the Utah Yeti Hockey Club, then they probably need to be institutionalized for drug use.
Have you spent any time looking at the state of discourse of Americans anywhere these days?
Man, I made the mistake.
The president of the United States just went in a State of the Union and said Joe Biden spent $8 million turning mice transgender.
I know. Like,
when it was actually like a transgenetics.
It's honestly, so we're at the 5-year anniversary of the entire world shutting down because of the pandemic, and I am very comfortable saying that as a society, we are so much worse off. We have conspiracy theorists, we have social media PhDs in climate change, foreign policy, and immunology. We have just Twitter, X is in complete disrepair. Mm-hmm. It's just everything is a mess. The world is on fire. It's just nothing is good.
So, but
anymore.
Speaking of that, I think before we get into our deadline after the final rose conversation.
And I have to break your brain with a
Oh, you
question.
do? Okay, so we'll save that right to the end of the show. Because
I'm about to break Mike's brain. He might hit me.
Because I would not do that on camera. Come
On camera?
On camera. Come on.
On camera.
Off camera, anything goes. It's
camera?
mainly Rachel beating the shit out of me off camera.
We're
But anyway.
punching each other in the studio.
What do you mean each other? You corporal punishment. It's rough. But you're a big hat gal, right?
I am.
So
If you don't see the clips of the show or you don't watch us on YouTube, I have literally worn a hat every episode.
So the baseball season's coming up.
Yes.
And
Is it?
It is. It's gonna be fun.
Did the Jays do anything fun, or are they completely
No,
disaster
they haven't done anything fun. Well, they signed Max Scherzer. That's kind of exciting.
Okay, has Vladdy been signed yet?
No, and they're apart on $50 million over a 14-year term, which equates to $3.5 million
Man, Rogers is going to make $50 million off our cell phones this year. Get out of here. Go away.
Funnily enough, the average annual value that apparently the two camps are apart in contract negotiations equals the Arizona Coyotes' security deposit, which is $3.5 million.
This is an unserious ownership.
So you can just take a big old swig of your drink there. Anyway, as happens with the new. First of all, I have a crazy stat. This has nothing to do with what I'm about to say, but I just broadened my brain. I knew I needed to tell you.
Okay.
Think about
Mike's crazy stat of the day.
Mike's crazy stat of the day. How different, Rachel? Let me ask you a question. How different was your life in 2015? Think back to your life.
Yeah, it was different. I had both grandparents.
Yeah.
It was pretty different.
How old were you in 2015? You're my age.
I was 19.
19 years old.
I was having my first drink because certainly I wasn't drinking in university underage. That didn't happen.
As creeps would say, barely legal.
Yeah.
Even. So I want you to take back to the time. I want you to flash back to that time. Think about how much of a different if right now.
I was an intern for the Toronto FC and Toronto Marlies in 2015.
If 2025
Yep.
Rachel met 2015 Rachel, how different of those two people would be? How different would they be?
I mean,
would they even recognize each other?
no. I fundamentally changed as a human being on July 1st, 2016.
So I want to tell you that 2015 was the last time that Jerry Jones and the Dallas Cowboys signed a free agent that made over $6 million per year.
What?
That is the last time that they went out on the open market and they signed a free agent.
What have they been doing?
They made over $6 million in average annual value. The last one was noted criminal Greg Hardy.
Oh, good. Awesome. Okay, so maybe that's why they didn't do it.
That stat blew my mind.
That seems straight fault. That seems straight fault. I know they've drafted Prescott and Lamb, and Micah
All they've
Parsons.
done is re-sign their own guys.
So it's a vibe of once a cowboy, always a cowboy type situation.
Like they've handed out big contracts, but it was to like Dez eventually, or it was to Dak.
Dez Bryant.
It was to Dak, and it was to CeeDee Lamb, and it will be to hopefully
Micah Parsons.
to Micah Parsons, and down goes down the list.
Did they sign somebody?
They didn't even re-sign DeMarco Murray. They didn't but they didn't the last time that they have signed a player for more than $6 million per season was 2015. 10 years. That's a decade.
Man, we were still in university.
Yeah.
I hadn't even moved to New Jersey the first time.
Yeah. It's crazy. 19, I was still living.
We were eating Papacio pizza.
Yeah. At UT?
And we were bussing at Robarts.
Yeah. Hey, I barely ever went to Robarts. That place soaks up sadness in its walls.
Yeah, man.
I was a Gerstein boy. Okay.
Honestly,
I loved me some
vibes.
Gerstein.
And you missed the guy flicking poo at other people.
Oh man, I still talk about we either called him the pee poo poo man.
Yes.
Or the poopatrator.
The poopatrator.
Or the shit terrorist. There were a couple.
And the fact that his name was like Samuel Opoku was really funny. Yeah, that was a time. We have some wild stuff that happens in Toronto.
Pretty crazy. I wanted to point that out because I knew I would forget by the end of the show. However, going back to baseball conversation.
Okay.
So as is the case when a new MLB season comes upon us, new era.
It's a new era.
New era. They're the league's official hat provider.
Correct.
They come out with a new like, you know, a sort of design series.
Tell me these are not good. I don't like where this is going already.
I'm surprised you hadn't seen it.
No, I haven't.
So what they decided to do, and I will turn my computer towards you to reveal, is every MLB team has two logos.
Okay.
One is the actual like caricature logo, like the Blue Jay, it's the actual Blue Jay head. And then the other one is the name of their team that they put across their jerseys. Like
when it says Yankees, or actually it says New York.
Or New York, or Blue Jays, or, you know, like
Red
that.
Sox.
So what New Era decided to do is release hats that had basically those two things layered on top of each other. But so the hat would have like, it would, like, your hat says "Sty" right here.
Yeah.
And let's say the logo for that is like a poop emoji. Or
okay.
For fun, the poop emoji would be right here in the middle, like in the middle of the hat with the logo behind it. Some of these made for some unfortunate.
Well, remember last year when the Oakland Athletics had one and it just said ass.
Yeah. So we're going along those lines here.
No, they wait.
Because
they did that and then ran it back.
So obviously this last year was the Oakland ass hat, which was absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
Now the worst one is for the. You know what? Don't look away for a second because I don't want to spoil the worst one.
All right.
So, are you a fan of the Bobbin Red Sox? Because take a look. This is what it looks like. That is what, and I will send this.
It looks like boob spelled incorrectly.
Yeah, I will send this to Connor, and if you were listening, you please go look these up because it is literally, it says Boston, but where the S and the T are is the big B overlap to it, so it says Bobbin. Another one is the Fippies. You know, interesting. Another one is the Mimi. The Mimi hat.
Memes?
The Memes.
Okay, the thing is that's actually a nice logo, but goddamn, that's an awful hat.
Interested in a Macers hat for the Mariners? And the second best one, the Tetas for the Rangers, which
that's
literally...
not going to be taken incorrectly at all.
Which literally means... So, but the best one, without a doubt.
Okay.
Without a shadow of a doubt, I would say.
What did the Oakland A's do?
No,
or the Vegas, whatever
it's
they are.
It's not the Oakland, it's not the A's, it's the Angels.
Okay.
And I think
the Los Angeles Anals. No.
I need that hat more than I need to breathe. I need that hat so badly.
I don't even... I got nothing. So
there you are, folks. You know, and I will send these pictures to Connor, obviously, so he can include them in the and you
video. This clip will most certainly be on our social channels.
There were, you know, there are a couple, you know, like there's the Astros as well. Like the Astros had an H in front of them, but
awesome.
like these are what they look like. There's the Arianas too for Arizona.
Chicago, the Cubs one has to be relatively normal because there's a C there.
So it literally spells it out. So it's Chicago, which is fine.
So fine.
But like the Arianas was very funny.
Arianas,
you know, like
it's
crazy.
Somebody get Ariana Grande up in there.
Detroit was also good for Detroit.
What does a Dodgers one look like? Does it look relatively normal?
Dollars. You know, like it's these are just insanity. So, and these are only these are just like the National League ones. Like it like the Fippies, the Mimis, you know, like all of these are just very, very funny. So
this is just on. I need to. Somebody sat. Yeah. Multiple executives.
This got approved in boardrooms.
Sat in a boardroom.
Yeah.
Looked at those and said, "Yeah, cut, print, let's go."
All of roll tape. Let's do it.
There are so many talented designers that I see. That is maybe one of the only positive parts of X now is the fact that there's so many talented people like Joe who designed the San Jose Sharks Pride jersey. She's absolutely she's incredibly talented. There's so many people like her that could have done 10 times the job for probably a quarter of the price.
Do you think this was an AI related disaster here? Like, do you think AI had something to do with this? This seems like something that someone thought was a great idea on paper and was like, all right, let's mock
AI
these up.
this.
Or this was like an algorithm based, like, what if we take the two logos, put them together kind of thing. It makes no sense, but it was very, very funny.
Yeah, that's not that. I'm looking forward to cheering for Mike Trout and the Los Angeles Anals.
The Los Angeles Anals. All right. So, Rachel, are you a big Bachelor gal?
Oh,
I remember we used to watch Bachelor
big time
together.
Bachelor gal. They film Bachelor in Paradise
I
near
remember.
where my condo is in Mexico, and like when they do the like high end dates, that they film it at like where my condo is. So I am a big time Bachelor fan. I actually got threatened by their producers because I was spoiling who was on the show.
I remember that. You were basically, and I was like, shut up! Like,
Yeah, I was spoiling who was on the show. And then Reality Steve was like, breaking news. I'm like, but it's not breaking. You stole my picture from TikTok.
It was quite funny. All right. So, I'm not sure how much, I know you're a Bachelor gal, so let's do a little after the final rose, which means, for anyone who didn't watch The Bachelor, after the final rose was the person they choose, they choose
The person
the
they're
person
engaged to,
they're going to
or
be. Yeah.
now they just break up with them after the final rose. But
And then, everyone gets around and they talk about how much they think they're going to get together, how good the partnership is and all that.
they bring on the scorned
Yes.
one to watch their heartbreak, which I think is like super torturous and mean.
I think it's hilarious.
And then they usually announce like the next Bachelor.
However, we are obviously not going to bring out the scorned players for this.
That'd be
but I
kind
think
of fun if we did.
it would be fun. But we're going to do a little after the final rose for the biggest trades of deadline.
Which one of us is Chris Harrison?
Which one does that mean? Which one of us is going to get canceled?
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll have to find out. Now, obviously, there's no real Bachelor theme that fits this. So I found the Who Wants to Be a Millionaire intense theme.
No, you have to say it's the most dramatic
This is the
final
most
rose ever.
This is the most dramatic trade. This was one of the most.
It actually was the most dramatic trade deadline ever.
Like we're not lying here.
Yeah,
so
that was a fact.
So let's get started. And this is one that didn't happen on the deadline, but it happened the night before. But it's a big one, so we might as well talk about it.
On a side note, did you
Okay.
Did you see I got it confirmed by somebody who would know.
Yeah.
That Mikko Rantanen was willing to sign an extension with the Leafs.
Oh yeah.
I was like,
Yeah, but I don't want to talk about Mitch Marner. I'm going to be honest.
I wanted to talk about Mikko Rantanen. There's a moratorium on the other one. I don't feel like getting another email.
Yeah.
I
it's
already
gonna be
got
fun.
one this week.
Although I did say that if Canada won, Rocket Security can threaten us as much as they want because at least Canada won. So, unfortunately, I am a man of my word. So you can send as much threatening stuff to me. Just don't send it to Rachel. Send it to me. But all right. On the most dramatic trade deadline ever. This is Who Wants to Be a Millionaire intense music. The Colorado Avalanche finally made their choice, handing a rose to Brock Nelson and William Dufour. I don't know who that is. From the New York Islanders in exchange for forward Callum Ritchie, defenseman Oliver Shillington, a first-round pick in 2026 or 2027, and a third-round pick in 2028. What do we think of this couple?
They traded for a 13-year-old or a 14-year-old.
For a 14-year-old.
Nice.
This is the Colorado Avalanche have hitched their wagon. They've given their rose to Brock Nelson, but they gave up a lot in the process. Do we think this couple will last? What do we think of them?
Okay. I think they're going to break up in the next few months. But I actually think that the winner of that deal is the New York Islanders.
So everyone's real high on Cal Ritchie, huh?
I have an article up on ESPN where I talk about Cal Ritchie.
What do you say about him?
He is, first of all, he's already in a high-end two-way player, and he's kind of unlocked his offense. He's averaging 1.8 points per game right now in the OHL. It's a lot. Everyone's excited about Easton Cowan in Toronto. Cal Ritchie's scoring more than Easton Cowan is. And the thing is Ritchie, because of the way that the Islanders are set up, they have Bo Horvat and Matthew Barzal locked up. And Barzal has been playing the wing. He can play center, obviously. Cal Ritchie can also play the wing and play center. Cal Ritchie's going to be in the Islanders lineup next year. And he is going to be in the middle six. He's going to be impactful. This kid has a ton of skill. Like, getting him and a first-round pick, I was like, whoa. For Brock Nelson, who you weren't going to re-sign, that was, in terms of value in, value out, I think one of the best trades of the entire deadline.
I think this is a great trade for both sides. I mean, it is a lot to give up, but the prices at this deadline
bananas.
Were insanity.
Which is, and I'm sure we'll get to it, it's why, like, I'm not buying for a second that Brock Besser was eliminated and nobody wanted him. Not for a moment.
Not a chance. But, like, every trade price had, like, a 25% tariff on it. Like, it was wild.
Hashtag.
For real. I think this serves exactly what both teams need.
Oh, absolutely.
They need, for how long have the Avalanche been searching for a 2C?
And a 3C.
But mainly for a 2, because they tried to get it in Middlestat.
Oof.
Did not work out.
He's not even a 3C.
And you called that, by the way, at last deadline. He's now a Boston Bruin. But like they were looking for a 2C even when they were winning the cup.
Yeah.
Like
no, they had Kadri.
Oh, sorry, they had Kadri.
Yeah. After the moment
Kadri left,
they were like,
they were looking for their
fudge.
2C. Because they tried JT Compher for a bit, and JT Compher's fine, but he's not. He's a great 3C. He's not a 2C. Obviously they tried Evan Rodrigue. He did okay, but he's much.
He's a winger.
He's namely a winger, or Rodriguez, however you want to call it.
Then they
went for Casey Middlestat.
Yeah,
and it didn't work out. And so they finally have it, at least for this stretch run. They have one. In Brock Nelson.
And they have Charlie Coyle.
Is their
3C. But that line of Jonathan Drouin, Brock Nelson, Valeri Nichushkin is a problem for other teams. Like, they've played a couple games together now, and every single game they're murdering. Like, they're murdering in expected goals. They're outscoring, outchancing, out everything. And the other thing is, like, Brock Nelson is not only good offensively, he is a very responsible two-way player. Like, it really frees up Nathan McKinnon because now you have Charlie Coyle, who can also take defensive matchups, and Brock Nelson, who's a solid two-way guy. And so that really frees McKinnon up to just go absolutely bonkers, which it's not like he needed a license to do. But, I love that trade for both sides, but because it really fits what they both need. Mm-hmm. I'm not entirely certain that Brock Nelson is going to remain an Av, but getting like cost-controlled Cal Ritchie for time and again, and then getting a first-round pick where you can either draft or you can trade that pick for an asset that helps you now, like, I thought that was really smart by the Isles. Mm-hmm. Like, really, really well done. And it makes up for the fact that they didn't trade Kyle Palmieri. They're going to retain him. And I saw people getting mad about that. But the reality is I think people underrate exactly how good Kyle Palmieri is for that locker room and what he means for the young players. And if he's going to stay and continue to be that kind of guy, then you extracted so much value out of the Brock Nelson trade that, like, you can be fine keeping Palmieri.
They're also not rebuilding. They're retooling.
Exactly.
They're
and Kyle Palmieri is still a really useful player.
They're going to hope to be competitive next year, and Kyle Palmieri helps you with that.
Yeah.
So there you go. So I think this couple is a great fling. At least for like, I think this is exactly what you need short. It's like right after you break up with someone, they're exactly what they need at this moment in life.
A solid rebound.
Exactly. All right. Moving on to our next. Then this is a one man's trash is another man's treasure type thing. So after the final rose, the Edmonton Oilers, after getting dumped by the Detroit Red Wings, Jake Wallman, defenseman, is on his way to the Edmonton Oilers in exchange for a conditional first-round pick in the 2026 NHL Draft and forward Carl Berglund going back to the San Jose Sharks. Quite the price to pay for a guy who had to get a second-round pick tacked onto him to get traded for free just a couple months prior by Steve Yzerman. What do we think of this couple?
Yeah, I mean, the fact that this was like really Like, yeah, the Oilers got Trent Frederick, but, like, they did not address their top six scoring need on the wing, and they did not address their goaltending. I think, first of all, Steve Yzerman never should have packaged a second-round pick.
Well, it made no sense.
Yeah, that was dumb right from the get-go. But Mike Greer, I mean, the guy gets a first and a second-round pick for Jake Wallman because he got a second-round pick coming in and a first-round pick going out. That is some serious tidy business, baby. Listen, the Edmonton Oilers absolutely need puck-moving defensemen because the guy they pay $9.5 million to...
Cannot do it.
Can't do it. Matthias Ekholm is hurt. John Klingberg is a better suited on the third pair, which is fine. So, do I like the acquisition for the Oilers? Yes. I think it's a very solid acquisition. Was it what they needed? No. They probably needed a guy like Brock Besser. Mm-hmm. Or even like Anthony Beauvillier or Ricard Raquel would have been a good fit. And then certainly in goal to just like not do anything is astonishing.
Yeah, I don't know how John Gibson is not an Edmonton Oiler right
I
now.
wonder if him tweaking his back just before the deadline scared them off. But, like, even then, how do you not call the Rangers about Jonathan Quick?
Well, they just re-signed Quick. I doubt they wanted to trade him.
Right, but you know what I'm saying? Like, and I understand, like,
Peter Mrazek.
Karel Vejmelka.
Vejmelka's out.
Like, yeah, but like, they signed him, so, like, he came off the market, right? But, like, you need to do something.
Peter Mrazek.
Yeah, Peter Mrazek. Oh, like...
Anyone.
Yeah, like this is just an unacceptable way to approach the deadline.
It's a great trade. Like
I love the Woolman like acquisition, especially if
in a vacuum.
They can keep him. Yeah, in a vacuum, it's great. But not in a vacuum. Come on.
Well, it's like you're homeless and you bought yourself a sick ass watch. Like, yeah, man, you got a sick ass watch. That watch is awesome. You need to tell time to get around. But you also need a house. You also need shelter. So, like, yeah, man, your watch looks sick.
And we're not, like, it's not even, like, you're homeless because of XYZ. It's, like, you're actively choosing to be homeless and you can afford to live somewhere, but you're like, nah, I'm going to buy a Rolex. Like,
yeah, like, you spent the last of your money on a Rolex instead of, like, a nice, comfortable one-bedroom apartment. Like,
yeah. Don't do that.
Which is a luxury. I would love to have a bedroom one of these days. All right.
A bedroom.
Moving on. Someone who I don't want to call this person loose, perchance, but this person's been passed around a lot.
Okay.
It's Anthony Beauvillier.
Yeah.
Who is now heading from the Washington Capitals to their heated rivals, the Pittsburgh Penguins, for a second-round pick? Quite the price to pay for what we like to call a little man whore in Anthony Beauvillier, who it just seems to be showing up in everyone's locker room these days.
He's in Bachelor in Paradise. Who is that guy it's Nick Viall.
Oh my God.
He's Nick Viall. Anthony Beauvillier is Nick Viall. Yeah, like, listen, the Caps didn't do a ton, and, like, I agreed with that. Like, the reality is very similar to Vancouver last year. I don't think they're as good as their record would say, and boy, did I seem to be right on the Vancouver Canucks.
But the Caps are fun to root for.
Oh, I'm super rooting for them. But I think you can't turn around and tell me that, like, some of these other guys weren't going to net you a first-round pick when Anthony Beauvillier got a second. Like, what are we doing here?
Yeah, it's pretty bonkers.
So, yeah, I think he's a nice depth addition for them. Is he moving the needle? No, absolutely not, because they have... have you heard of a guy named Alex Ovechkin?
No.
Never heard of that person?
No, he seems cool, though.
Yeah, so they have him on the wing. They have Alexei Protas on the wing. They have Connor McMichael on the wing.
Alexei Protas is going to score like 30 goals.
Yeah.
Like, that's pretty
Peter
pretty cool.
Laviolette might not be good with young players, huh? Connor McMichael and
Hendrix Lapierre.
And Alexei Protas.
I don't think Peter Laviolette is good. Like, I don't think
like I would not have him anywhere near Alexei Lafreniere, Gabriel Perreault when he comes up.
Oh.
And they just acquired Brendan Brisson.
That'll go well.
Yeah, that'll go well. I'm sure Pat Brisson is thrilled about that.
When was the last time the like other than Keandre Miller, I guess, but
that's a defenseman. It's not even a forward.
No, I'm saying like when was the last time like the Rangers have drafted like a good young defenseman? Like they
Braden Schneider,
but they sent out Niels Lundqvist.
Yep.
It just seems like nothing.
They cannot develop a young forward to save their lives.
Yeah. They got gifted the second and like the first overall pick and the second overall pick in back-to-back years.
And they still screwed up one of them.
And the other one is also like on the precipice. Like I have a lot of friends who are New York Rangers fans, like especially on Twitter, and I see a lot of complaining.
Yeah, I'm dating a New York Rangers fan, and put it this way, he is less than thrilled with their performance this season.
So this was a big one here.
Okay.
A big one. Because
how many roses?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of people involved here. So, let's say this is more of a polyamory type thing because
this is Bachelor in Paradise.
This is Bachelor in Paradise because just of how many people are involved in this.
I already know which trade this is.
I want to say scorned. Someone who had given up on their past relationship. He finally leaves. Dylan Cousins.
Yep.
Failed to defend his partner when he was getting scrummed in front of the net. You can kind of tell that was the final straw in the relationship. He heads to the nation's capital, the Ottawa Senators, for defenseman Dennis Gilbert along with defenseman Dennis Gilbert and a second-round pick in 2026 in exchange for forward Josh Norris and defenseman Jacob Bernard Docker. What do we think of this couple swap?
Yeah, it's honestly like Mr. Steal Your Girl, it feels like in Bachelor in Paradise. Mm-hmm. It's one of those things where it's like you're already dating someone and then some other guy shows up and they're like, I'm taking this guy on a date. Yeah. Listen, Dylan Cousins is a point a game with Ottawa already, and I think we also have to take into consideration that the player after they leave Buffalo is 25% better than they were in Buffalo. Ryan O'Reilly won the Conn Smythe promptly after being traded. Jack Eichel won the Stanley Cup and is on the outskirts of the Hart contention after he left Buffalo. Sam Reinhart
scored 60 goals.
Scored 60 goals and won the Stanley Cup. Yeah. Like, there is a very real situation here where people are better after they leave Buffalo. With the exception of, I guess, Casey Middlestat? I don't know. But I think when you look at it, Dylan Cousins...
Brandon Montour.
Yeah.
Another one.
When you look at Ottawa, first of all, Josh Norris is hurt all the time.
He's had, 3 shoulder surgeries?
Yeah, and he's also at his he's peak? At the peak of his career. Mm-hmm. Dylan Cousins is still... I think he's like 23.
And he's also signed forever. He signed for another 6 years?
5 years after this.
5 years ago.
So the thing is Ottawa decided, by all accounts, that they were a little too soft outside of Brady Tkachuk. And I understand that. Like, Tim Stützle plays a beautifully skilled game, and I absolutely love watching it. Mm-hmm. 0 people are afraid of playing against him.
The only thing I'm afraid of that Tim Stützle is going to do is he's going to egregiously dive and put me in the penalty box.
Yeah, pretty much. But with and Josh Norris, not only was he hurt all the time, he was also easy to play against. Dylan Cousins brings less offense. He's younger, but he is like there's some physicality and some pizzazz there. There's some truculence there.
Yep.
And he gets to the dirty areas of the ice. He's physical. He's durable, at least for now. And he fits kind of what Steve Staios is looking for, and he's been a really nice fit in Ottawa so far. Jacob Bernard Docker was somebody that it seemed like was always kind of on the outskirts looking in. He can move the puck. I think he certainly will be helpful
I like him.
In Buffalo because he doesn't have to play. Like, Buffalo has some really solid defensemen. Like, Rasmus Dahlin and Owen Power are 2 uber legit
and they have Bowen Byram. We forget.
Stars. Then they have Bowen Byram and Matthias Samuelsson, 2 legit defensemen.
Yeah.
Right? So Jacob Bernard Docker is a third pair guy there. Right? And he's not under pressure to play in any level of matchup role. It's just go back, retrieve the puck, and move it. And get it to Tage Thompson, Jack Quinn, JJ Paterka, all those guys.
Who might have been on the trade block. We don't know.
I don't even buy that because I know the owner absolutely loves him. Mm-hmm. So, I can't see that happening unless it's a blockbuster deal, similar to the Stankoven situation, which I'm sure we'll get to.
We will.
But, I think this is a change of scenery. We talk about, change of scenery. Hey, I'm going to be happier in this relationship kind of thing. I think this goes both ways. I think it goes both ways for the Sabres and for the Sens. I just think we'll see immediate benefits for the Sens, and it'll probably take a while to percolate for the Sabres.
Definitely. All right, moving on to the team that matters, the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Woo!
They finally got the loyal hometown girl next door, Scott Laughton.
Yep.
That they had their eyes on forever. But it always seemed like he wasn't quite available. But they finally got him. Scott Laughton and a 4th-round pick in 2025 and a 6th-round pick in 2027 go to the Leafs from the Flyers in exchange for young, maybe young hot forward Nikita Grabenkin and a 1st-round pick in 2027. Top 10 protected too, which means that if it falls in the top 10, it goes to 2028, which is not a real year. So
we might be dead.
We will all be dead by then. So what do we think of this couple?
Maybe a little bit of a rocky start, but the thing I like, and I guess we could probably loop Brandon Carlo into this as well.
Sure, we can loop Brandon Carlo into it too.
And that was the bigger trade.
Definitely.
The Leafs needed some serious help on the right side.
Along with that, then the Leafs turned around and they when it comes to them and their bunch of wives, they ended up getting defenseman Brandon Carlo. Maybe not the hottest person on the market, but someone who just locks down the home front for you, cooks a great roast.
One of the best penalty killing defensemen in the entire league.
Incredible. In exchange, although they did give up quite a lot, because they gave up prospect Fraser Minton.
How do you know they gave up Fraser Minton?
Because
Mike?
Rachel broke the news.
That was also freaking terrifying.
It is. It reminds me of when I broke that Joel Quenneville got fired from the Panthers, and for about 8 minutes I was having heart palpitations because I'm like, I have this on good authority, but if I'm wrong, no one will ever take me seriously again.
Yeah.
It's the same. Yeah, I get it. In exchange for young hot prospect Fraser Minton, a conditional 1st-round pick in the 2026 NHL draft, and a 4th-round pick in 2025.
Yeah, so I liked what the Leafs did, and part of the reason I like what the Leafs did is if you consider the fact that they acquired guys with term. So looking at their Puckpedia page, every single regular defenseman, so every guy that has a regular lineup spot, is signed for a minimum of the next 2 seasons after this one. So there is continuity on the back end there, and that is, I can't even stress how important that is for the back end. It is extraordinarily important to have some level of continuity. You look at the continuity on the Vegas Golden Knights, and it's like these guys know where they are at all times, and Bruce Cassidy knows he can just, off we go, thank you for coming, awesome stuff, right? And so I really like what the Leafs did because they addressed their third-line center position, which needed to be addressed in a massive way. And we all knew that they needed to address that they needed another top 4 defenseman. And Brandon Carlo's kind of been somebody that's been a name that's whispered in the market for a long time, but it always seems like a pipe dream because, number one, LOL Boston. And number two, what you have to give up to acquire someone like that is not insignificant, right? The reality of the situation is in an NHL front office, the value of skaters goes like this. Right-handed centerman, right-handed defenseman, left-handed defenseman. Oh, well, actually, yeah, and then left-handed centers, and then wingers. Centers, or right-handed centers and right-handed defensemen are at an absolute premium, and that's because there aren't as many right-handed players in the National Hockey League. And so acquiring, now you have Chris Tanev and Brandon Carlo anchoring one of your each of your pairings in the top 4. And the reality of that is Chris Tanev and Brandon Carlo are 2 of the best defensive defensemen in the NHL. They're not going to give you any offense. They're not two-way guys like a Shea Theodore and Alex Pietrangelo. They lock it the hell down like Jacob Slavin. Now, Jacob Slavin is a step above those 2.
Definitely.
But when I'm using a comparison of you're not expecting offense from Jacob Slavin. But he's the best defensive defenseman in the league, and I don't think it's particularly close.
You're expecting no penalties, strong Christian beliefs, and lockdown defense.
And you're getting all of that. The other thing that you're getting with both Scott Lawton and Brandon Carlo, and I'm not sure if anyone's made this public yet. Both of those guys were PA reps for their teams. Brandon Carlo was the Bruins PA rep, and Scott Lawton was the Philadelphia Flyers PA rep. And you don't get to be a PA rep if you're not considered to be one of the top 2 or 3 leaders by the guys in the dressing room, because the coaches and the GMs have no say in who the PA rep is for each team. That is selected by the players of the team. And the fact that Brandon Carlo and Scott Lawton were those guys for their team speaks volumes about the respect that they have from their teammates and the level of leadership that they bring to the dressing room. The other thing is, and we stand this on this podcast, Scott Lawton is one of the most vocal and biggest allies of the LGBTQ plus community in the entire NHL. He's up, like him and John Merrill, obviously Luke Prokop is a totally different discussion, but like him and John Merrill kind of stand alone in that sense. So when we talk about, like, you don't want to drop a nuke into your dressing room,
he's the opposite of that.
You're talking about adding 2 players with term that not only, in Brandon Carlo's case, lock it down defensively, and Scott Lawton brings some real, like, jerk mentality, which the Leafs really need because they keep getting punked in the playoffs. But you're talking about adding 2 quality human beings, and I think that matters. Like, when you're marrying someone, you want to make sure they're a quality human being, right?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Rachel, sometimes, and I've lost the music, so
music's done
because I have another music thing that I want to do for the last one. But sometimes relationships just don't work out. I mean, don't I know it? Relationships sometimes just don't work out, and that's unfortunately what happened with Mikko Rantanen and the Carolina Hurricanes, because the biggest trade of the day was that the Dallas Stars acquired Mikko Rantanen from the Carolina Hurricanes. I was about to say the Carolina Hurricanes.
Yep.
In exchange for forward Logan Stankoven, our short king, a conditional first-round pick in 2026, a conditional first-round pick in 2028, a third-round pick in 2026, and a third-round pick in 2027. Mikko Rantanen's tenure lasted for 13 games. He scored 6 points.
Yeah, so I'm going to say this. I don't love how Mikko Rantanen handled this situation
I don't
at
either.
all. I think it was really... Put it this way. You're entitled to decide where you want to go, but the way in which you handle that really matters, and I think it speaks to your character. The other side of this is I think how Eric Tulsky handled this says a ton about his character, in the fact that he would have had and been well within his right to blame Rantanen publicly, because not only did Rantanen hold out when he knew for like a week that he didn't want to sign there and they could have gotten this deal done, and it really impeded Carolina's ability to go out and get a guy maybe like Brock Besser. But he was, like, you could tell the last couple of games, he just, like, his heart wasn't in it, and I thought Rod Brindamore was going to strangle him, and rightfully so. But Eric Tulsky would have had every right to come out and absolutely toss every arrow that he wanted. Instead, he comes out and he goes, you know what, sometimes our organization isn't going to be for everyone. This didn't feel like home to him, and that's okay. He is allowed to feel that way, and we wish him the best in XYZ. It was incredibly classy. It's like wishing somebody who scorned you well. And I think that says a lot about, number one, Eric Tulsky as a human being. But now you kind of have confidence that, number one, we talk about all these hockey men, you have to be a hockey man to have a job. I think we can comfortably say that Eric Tulsky supersedes all of the hockey men when it comes to making bold and courageous moves as a general manager. Like, Eric Tulsky, no hockey man GM would have done what he did and had the respect, because we have seen guys come out and be scornful about it. Now, the Logan Stankoven part of it is crazy to me, because Tom Gagliardi, who owns the Dallas Stars, also owns the Kamloops Blazers, which is where Logan Stankoven played his junior hockey. It was widely known, especially like when I was in Vancouver, it was widely known that he was off limits. Like, Tom Gagliardi said, you are not to trade Logan Stankoven without my express permission. Now, getting Mikko Rantanen is...
It's an opportunity that doesn't come up very often.
Exactly.
I mean,
but
it's come up twice
this isn't the type of situation that like the owner would have had to sign off on, because that is how highly they think of Logan Stankoven. Now, given where Dallas is in their cup window, and given the type of player Logan Stankoven is, I think he's going to absolutely pop in Carolina because he is very reminiscent of Seth Jarvis.
Yeah.
And we all know how good Seth Jarvis is. So I think Rod Brindamore has to be absolutely thrilled. And if I would have told you 2 weeks ago that the Carolina Hurricanes were going to trade Martin Necas, Jack Drury, and a fourth for Logan Stankoven, 2 firsts and 2/3, you would have... No.
Oh, okay.
Remove Rantanen. So it's just Martin. They were making a trade, and it's out goes Necas, Drury, and I believe like a fourth, and in comes Stankoven, 2 firsts and 2/3. You would be like, Carolina wins that trade.
Yeah.
So they basically came out. I'm not going to say they came out ahead per se because of the whole Rantanen thing, but it's not like they got worse by trading away Necas and Drury. Mm-hmm. Like, you're getting cost-controlled, really valuable assets, and I will say this with significant certainty, and I, for legal reasons, can't get into why I know this to be true, but Carolina was planning to acquire Brock Besser with one of those picks in the Rantanen deal, and because that deal took so long to actually get approved by Central Registry, because Mikko Rantanen waited till the last possible minute to okay this trade to Dallas and sign there, it really inhibited Carolina's ability to make that trade because they needed that asset officially in their coffer. But this notion that a first-round pick was not offered for Brock Besser is flat false. And, I wish I could put the proof online, but, for legal reasons, I can't. But I think Carolina has every right to be angry at Mikko Rantanen for not only kind of, scorning them and saying I'm only signing with these 4 teams, but for also holding it up for so long that it impeded Carolina's ability to use the assets they were going to get for him to make their team better. I think that's a really crappy thing to do.
I want to know what it was about Carolina that just turned him off so much.
Well, he said, so Rod Brindamore, I love Rod Brindamore so much.
I know he did the whole thing where he's like, I'm only going to sign with 4 teams and you're not one of them. But I wonder,
So maybe he just had it in his head, these are one of the 4 teams that I want to play for, and you're not one of those teams. And, listen, he's a UFA. He's entitled to say that.
So, but, this is how many times has a player been traded to a team heading into UFA, and he knows, I'm going to test the market. I'm going to go out. I'm going to, why did he know. If you're a Darren Ferris client, you do it all the time. Why did he have to do this? Why did he have to be,
Why did he wait 30 days to tell them?
Especially because, listen, man, you're not going to be there for very long, and also, Carolina's a good team. You were in a good position. You play well. You go to the open market. You make a crap ton of money. I mean, obviously he's made a crap ton of money now, because because the two got down on one knee for each other and signed an 8-year marriage contract. Worth $2.5 million or $12.5 million a year. Which, frankly, I think is less than he could have gotten in the open market.
Right, but you also have to consider tax-free states. So
yeah,
it's
but
probably
you also have to consider that if you have a good accountant, anything can be.
No, but what I'm saying is let's say he signs in Toronto. It's about $300,000 per year delta, which over the course of the contract is it's $2.5 million bucks. That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
Right? So I get it. I don't like how Mikko Rantanen handled it. I do really believe that Eric Tulsky deserves a ton of credit.
All right. Well, the last thing that happened was, the Brad Marchand and the Boston Bruins. They sat down, the Boston Bruins, to try and hammer out. They went to couples therapy together. And the Florida Panthers, they went, no, I think we're done. Or not the Florida Panthers. The Boston Bruins, no, we're done with this. And Brad Marchand ran up and went,
what about my seed?
That's good. And so,
what am I supposed to do? I love that song.
Great song. Controversially, the best High School Musical as well as High School Musical 2.
Absolutely correct take.
Yeah, 100%. They traded the lifeblood of their team, Brad Marchand, the person who personifies what it means to be a Bruin. He's won a Stanley Cup with them. He's the captain. He's been there for 15 years. The reports are that they offered Brad Marchand a 3-year deal at, I believe it was $3 million per.
Yeah.
Brad Marchand obviously wanted like 6.5 or something with which
he wanted. I heard he wanted like 7.25.
On a 3-year deal with the cap rising up, I'd give that to him. Like, come on.
3.5 is legit
insanity.
Outrageous.
It's absolute insanity. So the Bruins decided to go their own way, and they sent him to the Florida Panthers for a conditional second-round pick. It turns into a first, I believe, if the Panthers
get to the conference final
and Marchand plays
50% of their games, it turns into a first.
Absolute insanity.
Okay, so here's the thing. It came out because Brad himself said it. So this is not a report. Brad Marchand said this.
Yeah.
So
this is just information.
This is like, first of all, he looks very weird in Florida colors, and insane. I don't like it. But it came out that leading up to the deadline, he didn't send his agent to do the nonsense, which a lot of players do. There's a certain player in Toronto who loves to do that. He walked his booty up to Cam Neely's office and sat down with Cam Neely and Don Sweeney and the rest of Bruins management and said, I want to be a Bruin. Let's get this done. I'm willing to compromise. So originally he wanted like 7.25 or 7.5. And I have a very well-placed source, and if you follow me on Instagram, you probably know what that source is. But like, he was willing to bend on his ass. So they had agreed on a 3-year term. Fantastic. He was willing to bend on his dollar term. And the Bruins were like, nope, not willing to compromise. And it's like, okay, he's been underpaid his entire career. Like, his whole career, he's been underpaid. And you mean to tell me in the 2 or 3 years you're going to do a retool, you can't afford to pay this guy?
Makes no sense.
Even if it's his current salary, 6.5 or whatever it is, you can't afford to pay that for your captain?
It just makes no sense. I don't get it.
Like, Pete Blackburn put out a meme, was like, shoot that guy.
Yeah.
And like, honestly, I get it. If Brad Marchand was like, I want $9 million, then like, yeah, okay, like, get out of here.
That's a little much, yeah.
But like, if you're telling me in a rising cap environment that you can't pay this guy 5% of your cap, I don't believe you. Because at some point, you're going to break David Pastrnak. You're going to break Charlie McAvoy. And in the way that the Vancouver Canucks seem to have managed to break Elias Pettersson and Quinn Hughes, like, if you break Pastrnak and McAvoy, I'm sorry to say, like, you're not contending anymore. You're done.
They're not contending anymore right now.
No, like, you're not contending at all, like, with those guys because they don't trust you. And so I think, listen, is $7.5 million a lot? Yes, it absolutely is. But if Brad Marchand was willing to bend, and he said he was, and I know somebody that was very, very close to him that also said, like, he was actually willing to take less. If that's the case, I think Bruins fans have every right to be upset with how this transpired. It's one thing to be trading Brandon Carlo and Charlie Coyle. It is entirely another thing to be trading Brad Marchand.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that to me is that's a tough pill to swallow if you're the Bruins. I think that's very difficult to wrap your head around, and I think you have every right to be upset. But I also think that it's interesting that they got the Jacobs family to buy into a rebuild because the Jacobs family is notorious for being like, no.
I don't think this is a rebuild. I think it's a retool.
But even to take a step back, you got them to.
I think they realized, like, we fired our coach.
It didn't work.
It did not work.
Probably should have kept that guy.
Exactly. I feel like it's not a good sort of like sign when you fire, like, you move kind of heaven
you
earth to fire
your
this guy,
coach and you get worse.
And another team fires their coach to hire the guy you just fired. Like, I feel bad for Drew Bannister because he's like he gets to St. Louis. It's his first year, and then Jim Montgomery gets fired, and they're like, all right, well, let's upgrade. And you get fired like 20 games in, no fault of your own.
Yeah. And it's not like the Blues are any better.
But the Blues are about to make the playoffs. Potentially.
I mean, if Vancouver continues trending the way they're trending, yeah.
Exactly. So it's just a rough situation to be in. The Bruins really kind of did this to themselves, and everyone wants to bring up the comparison of Stamkos. What happened here? We all flamed him. That was an 8-year term, but it was still another insulting contract they offered. And even still, like, Marchand means so much to that team. The cap is rising.
And if you're trying to retool and you have young players, Fraser Mitten, Matthew Poitras, there's a Russian that I'm forgetting. Like, you have all these young players. Do you not want them to have someone that's like, this is what it means to be a Bruin?
You probably would, right?
I would probably think that you would want that. Anyways, so, yeah, that's my take on that. It's just, I think that's a little tough. It's tough to swallow if you're a Bruins fan, and boy howdy,
it's fun to watch.
The ultimate rat line with Tkachuk, Bennett, and Marchand is gonna be, and not even rat line, like as Marchand said himself, scumbags.
The only thing that I like more than watching the downfall of the Boston Bruins and also Bruins culture is donating to Jumpstart, our charity of choice.
You don't like me breaking your brain?
Oh crap! I forgot about breaking my. Okay, you've teased this for a week. What is happening here?
Okay, I have a question for Mike.
Okay, what's the question?
Sidney Crosby and Alexander Ovechkin.
Yeah.
Two
well-known fellas.
Really good players.
Good at hockey.
Really good at hockey.
Yeah.
Okay. Two famous hockey sticks. One guy for being like basically no curve at all, and one guy for having the most ridiculous curve we've ever seen. If you switch hockey sticks, so you give Sidney Crosby Alex Ovechkin stick, and you give Alex Ovechkin Sidney Crosby stick, who scores more goals?
That's a great question.
Or not even, like, who puts up more points? Because immediately that one-timer, out the window.
Well, considering that they're opposite-handed, so... No, I know.
Yeah,
I'm just,
you know what I mean.
Joking.
Like...
This is tough. I think Crosby.
Yeah?
I think Crosby is the more adaptable player.
Okay.
Like, I think Ovechkin is obviously the best goal scorer of all time. He's about to.
Yeah, that's not really up for debate.
He's about to pass someone who used to be. He's about to pass what people are calling the great once.
Yes.
And is now,
he who will not be named on this podcast right now.
But I feel like Sidney Crosby, and he's very good, but also like Ovechkin, he does kind of one thing really well, right? Like he's the best at what he does.
Darren Pang called him a one-trick pony, and I was like, yes, but that one trick is doing the thing that's most important.
Exactly. And I don't even want to say he's a one-trick pony. Like, he can do other things. He can be physical when he wants. He can, he can do things, like, he can forecheck when he wants. He can do stuff like that. But Sidney Crosby, like, I remember there's been a couple instances, like, after his rookie season, I think he finished, like, 39% on the draw or something.
Yeah.
And so he was like, so that summer, he was just like, I'm going to become the best faceoff person in the NHL. And he just worked on faceoffs all summer, came back, and he had, like, a 60%.
And he has, like, a career faceoff percentage from, like, the 58 or
exactly.
something.
Like, he's
like
been
that.
elite
like,
in the draw. He was really good at setting people up. But he's like, you know what? I want to score more goals. So what he did is he went into the lab that summer and he started, basically like working on a shot, and he scored 50 goals next year. Like that's what Crosby does. I think if you give Crosby Ovechkin's stick, like his curve,
right.
Crosby then like trains enough and finds a way to have like the greatest shot we've ever seen in the NHL. Like, he finds a way to use that curve. If he adapts to it and he uses that curve, that with, like, Sidney Crosby skills behind it would be an unstoppable shot. It'd be like a nuclear bomb.
Yeah, like, I think he'd lose his backhand power, obviously, so, like...
Yeah, but he would...
But I'm saying, like,
he'd
the
be
one-timer this guy would possess would be outrageous.
He'd be able to... I just even think, not even just the one-timer, I think just, like, Sidney Crosby coming down, and instead of going to the backhand, he's able to fit a puck with like on his forehand within a slot that's like that small, like it's just, I think he would be able to do things with a puck that we've like never seen, with that curve.
He would curve the hockey puck.
Exactly.
Like, he would shoot it and it would just be like, phew.
And I think Ovechkin would find a way, like he'd just become really good at slap shots. Like instead of like the one time, like, like, I think he'd be, instead of wrist shots or snap shots, like I think he would just use brute force instead of pinpoint accuracy. Like, because that's basically what Crosby does. Or he would become a backhand guy, like he'd become a tip-in guy or something. He's a big body. He could potentially become a net front presence instead, But I think Crosby, that's a great question. I think Crosby would be better just because he's more adaptable. But
I tend to agree.
Yeah.
I tend to agree, but I also think, like, Ovechkin is just such a special shooter of the puck that, like, yes, obviously that curve is helpful. But I'm convinced that guy could play left-handed and probably still score, like, 30. Like, the mechanics with which Ovechkin approaches shooting, maybe, like, Crosby stick, no, but if you gave him, like, a regular toe curve, like Nikita Kucherov stick or Leon Draisaitl stick, like, I still think he probably scores, like, 50 at the peak of his career. Like, he's just that good. And so
I have a question that I'll ask you before we leave.
Okay.
So we
both
those,
agree it's Sid, but I think it's close.
We take
I
those,
do think it's close.
And we've gone pretty long, so I want to do this. I want you to answer this quickly.
Okay.
We take those two sticks, we snap them in half. They're gone.
Okay.
And we give Ovechkin and we give Crosby Ryan O'Reilly's stick. Who scores more goals? Ryan O'Reilly's stick, just for reference, is completely straight, except for the absolute end of the toe, which is curved at like basically a 90-degree angle. It looks like a clothes hanger, except even more. Like it's one of the most ridiculous things you've ever seen.
I think it's Sid.
Because of the back end?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think it's Sid because of the back end.
Yeah.
Again, like Sid, we forget Sid's won the Rocket three times. Like
Twice,
the guy
yeah.
can score, right? Obviously he's not Ovechkin when it comes to scoring, but I think if you gave both Sid and Ovechkin Ryan O'Reilly's stick, I think Sid is overall a more valuable player. I think Ovechkin still finds a way to be a complete menace. Yeah.
Interesting. All right. Well, you know who aren't menaces? Jumpstart.
We love Jumpstart.
We love Jumpstart. They're actually our charity of choice, if you didn't know that. Jumpstart, as I said, is our charity of choice. They help economically disadvantaged kids play team sports, which is a cause that's near and dear to Rachel and I's hearts. Please, if you can, donate. All the links will be in the description of this episode below. We love Jumpstart. They're our charity of choice. And thank you for listening. Rachel, before we leave, anything you want to let our listeners know or leave them off with?
Very excited for post-trade deadline and not hearing about who is and isn't going to be traded. And I think the playoff races are going to be super cool. And I will say this with my entire chest. Go Blue Jackets.
There you go. All right. We will see you next week.